Welcome back to the InDesign set of introductory instructionals. Now in this presentation what we're going to do is to put some text in, and also we're going to place a couple of extra drawings into this region through here. Now what we're going to do first, I'm just going to minimize this. I've put the text as a separate file here where I've stored all of my other information, and the text is in a simple Word document file. It's probably good to do the overall editing of text and so on, or the copy as we might call it, into Word, because it also has grammar checks, and the checking is probably a lot more sophisticated than in InDesign. However, InDesign is also reasonably good at making corrections and so on. However, here we go. I'm just going to open this sample text. Now I'm just going to select it all. There's no real logic to any of this text here at the moment, and I'm just going to go to InDesign through there. I'm going to select my text tool, going to put a cursor into there at the start of that text blocks, and now because it's pasted into, I've copied that text from the Word file onto my clipboard, I'm just going to go Control V paste, and it's going to copy that text into that text box that I've set up. Now remember that we did set up the flow. Well, it's going through here and all the way into here. Now you can see there's a little red box there. That means there's extra text that's actually flowing outside of the box that we can't see. I'm not going to worry too much about that, because I will edit down this text later and make sure that the text does fit into the two spaces that I've set aside. Now you can edit the text reasonably easily. So we can change the font of the text by just highlighting it. Again, remember we're in our text tool and using the contextual menus through here. So we've got a whole bunch of, I'm going to use Arial, change it to Arial. We've got regular, bold, italic. We can change the size of it to 10 point and so on. So there's quite a broad range of text control, and once we start to get into the finer grain through here, there's a lot of control in InDesign where you can fine-tune the appearance of the text. If we wanted to justify the text through here, that's to sort of get the text to sort of sit snug against the edge there, we can then hit this icon up the top here, this context icon, and then that will justify the text through there. Now if I zoom in, Control plus, you can see here one thing that InDesign does is that it defaults to an automatic hyphenation. Now that's typical for newspaper scripts and so on. It is a little bit annoying in these sorts of reports. However, we can actually change the hyphenation. It's sometimes hidden away, but if we look at the extra options over here, where we've got a hyphenation there, we can turn the hyphenation off, go OK, and then it will stop doing hyphenation in those paragraphs. It is a little bit of a personal choice. In my opinion, sometimes the hyphenation does tend to make the text flow a little bit more untidy. Now we've seen how we can then, using the text tool, change the style of the fonts and so on. So when we go in, we can also start to make things bold, make them larger so that they become headings, subheadings and so on. Now in the same way that we made a text box to make the overall text in this area through there, we can drag other text boxes out, and we can make little subtitles on our images. And so here we can write photo montage from pre-kindy play area. I can just highlight that. I'm going to change the fonts there to Arial. I'm going to make that bold, and I'm going to come in here and change the color of that to white so that it's a little bit easier to read. And then you can just move it around, Control 0 to around and on top of that image through there. Now we can arrange the order of these things. So if we wanted to send that text behind the image, we could sort of send it to the back, but we can't read it anymore, so that's not very useful for us. But we can then also bring it to the front, or we can select the image and go right click and go arrange and send the image to the back, so that text is always sitting on top. Okay, we're just going to put a couple of extra little drawings in here, and we'll call it a day with the instructionals for InDesign. So I'm going to go back to my images that I have saved off, and here we can see there I've got the plan image and also the elevation and the section queued up. Now I'm going to resize some of these images so that they fit into our presentation, but we do need to be a little bit careful that when we resize we don't rescale. Now if I go image size and I adjust the physical size of that image, it will shrink the overall image to that new size that I make. So we don't want to do that. But if we use the crop tool in Photoshop, it won't actually, it will just crop the edges off the side of the drawing, but it won't actually resize the image or rescale it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in this crop to 20 centimeters. It's a little bit bigger than what we need, but the 19 is just not going to work for us in this instance. Okay, I'll do it at 19.94. I'm not going to split hairs, and I'm going to then unconstrain it. Now the height of my division of thirds is from memory 9.2 centimeters, so I'm going to pull this to 9.2. So I'm cropping the image, but I'm not resizing it. So this image will still be to scale, and because this is at 1:100 at A4, it's going to stay that way. So I'm going to crop that, and I'm going to do the same with, I'm going to constrain it so I get the first go at it. So that's 20 millimeters. And I'm going to unconstrain it. I'll go to 9.2 high, 9.2, enter. Okay, so here we've got our two elevations. Now I'm going to save those, save and save, and close those off so I can place those into my document. Now with the plan it's going to be a little bit harder, because if I try and crop this down, so here's the sort of extents of my plan to the same width, which is 19, there we go. Then we're going to not fit all of that image in. Now we need to make a decision. So we can either make the image a little bit bigger and try and fit it in. So if we go to say 20 centimeters, we could just squeak it in and it would then sit to the middle of the so that would just squeak in. So we could crop it to there. So if we go enter crop, that should then drop into our InDesign file reasonably well. But if I wanted to make it smaller again, then the thing I would have to do, if I just undo that, Control Z, if I went image size, the next scale down would be 1:200, in which case I would then have to halve that width, which would be 29.7 divided by 2, which is 14.85, and that would turn that drawing then into 1:200 drawing. Now, I'm not super keen to do that because I want to try and keep all of the drawings more or less the same size. So I'm going to try and get back to my 20 millimeters. It's just there. Enter, save that off through there. I'm going to go back to my InDesign, Control D to place. There's my plan. I can drop that in and you'll see it's going to come right down to the middle now. Control D, my section, which is going to sit through there. Now it's overlaying a bit of the plan, but it's actually covering it up, which is okay because it's higher in the hierarchy. And there's the elevation I can then just drop in. Oops, Control Z. If you ever get this sort of brown frame, it means that the content in the frame is disconnected. So just click out of it and make sure that it's blue, so that when you can move that around, you can then get everything involved. So Control 0. So you can see now, I'll pull that across so that it's on the inside. So it's a little bit crude at the moment. Now the size of the text there is getting a bit tiny compared to the size of the subtitle there. So what I would be tempted to do in Photoshop is to actually erase some of that text and do the subtitles perhaps in InDesign rather than Photoshop, so we can keep them all consistent. So hopefully that's given you a good overview of how to use InDesign. It may be a little bit frustrating at times, but hopefully when you work through this with the instructor, they'll be able to, or the facilitator, they'll be able to help you out if you get stuck. Other than that, good luck, and we look forward to the results.